Seance.
Hi, my name is Candy.
I knew that, dearie. I was told. We made love in Mauritania once. I was a swan. Let me guess. Of course, it's not real guess. It's forces beyond our comprehension speaking through me. But let me guess. You're a Virgo this time, right?
No, a Gemini.
That's what they told you. I know. But you have Virgo rising.
No, actually, I think I had Libra rising.
I know, but I'm not looking at simplistic, superficial astrology. Anyone can do that. I'm looking deeper into the cosmos, behind Libra, tucked away next to the neutron star. To the left of Virgo, too, was the Virgin. It was also rising. And it is this conflict between the scales, the twins, and the dreaded Virgin and the tax collector. It is this conflict that is tearing you apart. This is why sometimes you feel deep melancholy and heart-piercing grief, and why you seek solace in strangers, right? I bet you did not know that.
No, I thought it was because I had a troubled childhood.
Of course you did. Your parents did not understand you. How could they, Candy?
They tried, but I was...
They were aliens. And you're an alien hunter who had her memory wiped, and you keep having a dream where an alien fetus crawls out of your stomach and poops. Only you can't remember it. That's the whole point. I'm speaking to the cosmos right now. Hello? Hello? It is telling me everything is going to be okay. As long as you buy and read my book very carefully. Will you do that?
Sure.
But wait. Nothing. Rather than waste decades into training and meditating to speak to the other side, you can now take a shortcut right out of your online bank account. Hold on. It's telling me something. It's telling your luck will change if you spread knowledge. Buy 20 copies of my book. It's a clear message I'm getting from the depths of a different dimension. Will you do that? I'm sorry. We must have a bad connection. Interference with the spirit world happens. Are you ready to descend into the realms of Hades? I was there this morning. I have studied everything. Greece, Cyprus, Lipari, ancient religions, chaotic pasts, sex magic where you strangle the person afterwards. Fantastic! It answers really important questions. The number is 212-360-2367. Hello, line 4. You have 5 minutes. The meter is running.
Yeah, Beatrix Fontaine? Tell me why I should have to pay for advice. It's insulting. If you've got a gift, you should share it for free.
My. You've become quite a little firebrand since running that tavern in Krakow 500 years ago.
Really? Wait, tell me.
Yes, you're in the tavern. It is in Krakow. Yes, I am seeing it happen. You're wiping the bar with a rag and... Do you remember a fat man?
I don't know.
You and the fat man are having an argument in the tavern. Oh no! A woman leaves quickly, shouting. I'm seeing it very vividly as if it were happening right in front of me. He's screaming. You're screaming. I hate you. I hate you. It's in Polish, but the spirit world has translated it for me. Have you ever hated someone?
Yeah.
I knew this like the hand of my back. You have loved someone you hated. You have conflicting feelings. Oh no. You are holding the man in a headlock. You are enraged.
Fucking A! Am I gonna kill him?
You are about to smash his head on the bar.
Awesome! What next?
Now you are holding his head in your hands. Now you are kissing him.
What?
Yes, you are kissing him with the tongue now. He is grabbing your long hair, shoving his tongue deep inside your mouth. You are really enjoying this. The passion is exploding. Your hand is reaching for his groin.
Oh, God! No way! No fucking way!
The abyss does not lie. Now he has his hand down your trousers. You are very engorged. You have done this before. You know it is wrong, but you cannot help yourself.
Oh my God, no!
Oh yes. You are about to take it from the big man now. Ugh.
Hello. Hey there, ladies and gents. Welcome to Almaned Paranormal Season 2, podcast number 21. Hope you all had a wonderful Thursday. Please, everyone, make yourself at home. And if you have any questions for our special guest, don't be shy because questions are always welcome here. Every one of you means so much to me, and you are all very important to this channel. So I do like to welcome everyone in the chat by name. If I haven't greeted you immediately, I promise I will get to you. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to us and don't forget to hit that bell icon to get notifications when we go live. And lastly, if you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up. It would be most appreciated. So let's get on with this show. Our special guest is Gail Hyson, and she has had paranormal experience since she was a teenager. Gail attended the Woodstock Music Festival in 1969, and she appeared in the Woodstock documentary and is featured in the recent book, 50 Years, A Piece of Music. Today in the research community, Gail is known as a telepath, psychic, and remote viewer. Someone who accurately sees distance or future events. The chapter on telepathy in Dr. Dean Radin's international bestseller, Supernormal, describes one of the many successful paranormal experiments with Gail as the subject. She has contributed to many experiments and papers on the paranormal phenomenon. In the 1970s, entrepreneur Werner Erhard presented Gail at events to promote the Mind Dynamic seminars that involved in Earnhardt's seminar training on EST. Gail has been welcomed into indigenous cultures, including Mexico, Alaska, and shamans of Mongolia. In 2012, she was initiated as a Mongolian shaman. Yes. In 2014, she was awarded an honorary doctorate to the Mongolia's National Academy for Science. For decades, Gail Hyson, has been a subject and contributor to scientists in the paranormal and the PSI research field. She has led an unconventional life and found herself accepted into other cultures just by being herself. So let's welcome Gail. Hey there.
Hi. Great to be here this evening.
I am so excited.
This is my first question and answer podcast YouTube experience, so we'll see how fun this can be.
Oh, it will be very fun. I'm just going to hello, Christina Bell. She's always my first to say hello. And notifications take forever, so people are going to stream in as we go along. So first question, and I promise these are easy. What were your first experiences like, and did your family know, and how did they react to it?
Let's see. My first experiences would be when I was very young. I maybe 6 or 5. I'm not sure exactly the age, but up somewhere between then and 7. Maybe I was about that age. And we were living in Flushing, New York. And we had a big house where my grandparents lived downstairs and we lived upstairs. And I would experience something that now I know is called, I think, astral projection. Mm-hmm. But at the time as a child, I didn't know what to call it. So I named it flying. But I found that since that, when I've spoken to other people recently in these different shows, there are other people who as kids called it flying also. So I guess there was a lot of us flying around there using the same term. And it would be sort of like I would be laying in my bed, but then I would be out of my body and I would be floating around the house I lived in. And I would see myself sleeping in the bed. I would go from the top of the stairs, because there's a lot of stairs on a 3-story house. and I would jump down to the next level, but it would just be sort of a leap. And I thought that I really didn't know how that I wasn't really in my body. I was, so, so I sort of thought I was in my body, and I was flying around the house, and I thought everybody did this.
Right.
I didn't realize till years later in my teens and then up into my 20s that I could do this and fly into other places. So I could go from the house to above the house, to above the
Wow.
town, to above the city. And I learned how to just sort of travel like that. And I would say that would be my first experience. And my second experiences would be I would have certain dreams that would, make me feel maybe connected to a deceased person, or I would have dreams about things that were going to happen. But I think a lot of this was my exposure from my grandma Schneider, who lived downstairs in the first floor of the house, and she would share with me that she'd have she wouldn't call them dreams. She would say, she didn't speak English, she spoke Yiddish, but I understood
Right.
what she was saying. It was sort of broken English. And she'd say, she'd have a visit with her brother or a son she had lost, and she would just talk about it like it was an everyday, oh yeah, the label visited me and we had a talk and it was good to see him and that kind of a thing. And I just felt very comfortable with that, and that just seemed like sort of regular behavior. And then when I was going with my dad to meet some of his friends at like the Theosophical Society or the Vegan Society or whatever alternative thing he was doing, they would say often to him that they thought I was a very spiritual child. None of this, of course, that made any sense to me or anything like this.
Right.
I always felt like this was like a normal way of being. It was only when I spoke to other kids that didn't fly or whatever I found out, oh, guess everybody doesn't do that. So that would be the beginning. Then
Oh,
in my teenage years, what you spoke about was when I was first given the tools or the ideas that there was more that you could do with this mind or consciousness or whatever by doing things in the distance. Even though you were sitting in a room, you could actually do functions and see things that were in another place. So I was 16 when I took the mind dynamics course, and it taught you, it pulled from different different spiritual people's ideas, and they kind of put it all together into one little package, because back in
Right.
the 70s, the self-help and all this was very big, and everyone was going to gurus, and
Yep.
so people now might not understand what it was like back then, but this
Oh,
was a popular thing to be doing. So in there, I learned about being able to close my eyes and go inside and visit, like connect somehow to the body of another person who was sick. And I would tell them what was wrong with the person. They would just tell me the name and the age and the city. The people wouldn't be there in the room, but the person who would know them would be there.
mhm.
And then I would spend a week after that, trying to heal them with light and positive energy and things like this, which I don't know how many other 16-year-olds were doing that.
Right. Right.
So that I would say that would be the beginning of all that.
That is absolutely amazing. I mean, let me introduce, because some people have come in. I want to say hello, Sabra and Frank. And Sabra did say hello, Miss Gail. And Janine, hello. Um, that to me, I love, because as a child, I saw my first apparition at 3. And it's funny because it's the same apparition. Me and my father came together in my 20s and discussed this. And he saw the same thing when he was 16 in the same room.
Wow.
And but it's funny because I could hear spirits, I could see them. And it being the 70s, I was bugging my parents wanting to crawl into bed with them because there's people in my room, and I couldn't explain it to them. And, even though both my parents have had some sort of ability, they didn't understand. So, it's the 70s. They locked their door. And I can remember dragging my pillow and blanket and sleeping at the door. So I love that your family was so open to it, because that's what I try to be for my son, is very open.
Yeah, and that's how my children have had to grow up with all kinds of of situations here. And when you're like that and it's your child and they come home from school and you tell them everything about somebody that they really like, and you tell them in detail about their parents and the car they drive.
I love it.
Hide anything from you.
Right. So you talked about mind dynamics. How did it affect your abilities when you started getting involved with them, and then them having you?
It made them sharper and sharper. I often wonder, because I left the group at 17 and a half, and I never did any other, like intentional reading or things like this until I got involved with Russell Targ and Dean Radin in 1998. So from 1973 or so until then, the only thing I did was whatever happened for me naturally. And that was definitely enough to keep me plenty busy between dreams and knowing things. But I've always often wondered, just like, if you'd been a ballerina or something and you'd studied all those years and kept up doing what you were doing, what would you be like now? And I found that even after doing it for them, because I did cases for them for a year and a half, I was doing hundreds by that time. And when I was doing it, everything was starting to quicken for me. I would know the phones before the phones would ring. I'd know people before they were coming. And this sort of it's kind of a blessing and curse mixture, because you also know when there's a lot of danger and bad things and other stuff.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if it's whatever, but what I ended up doing was only what was natural. And I never did anything for money. And I don't get somebody come up to me and say, can I do a reading for you? I don't do that. I don't do readings like that. But if I'm sitting with someone and I get a feeling and I hear a message, then I just say, I just had this feeling something happened to your mother or something, whatever that is.
Right. That's awesome.
Question here. Do you believe?
Yeah, Robbie says, do you believe psychic abilities or gifts can be hereditary?
I personally absolutely do. Because for a while I was doing something called Dr. Gale, where I was answering letters and emails that would come to the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where people were having uncomfortable experiences of things being moved or their child acting unusual and this kind of thing. And the one thing I found every time I'd investigate with each person I would be talking to about what their issue was that they started to think about it, especially ones who've had suppressed, a lot of people as a child are very close to this open, intuitive, listening to your inner voice kind of being. And then it kind of gets taken away from them through religion, through education, through all these other things that then put up like a screen, and it's harder for that information to come through. So I've always noticed that when they start to think about it, when they're, freaked out because a dead person came at their father or someone,
right.
If they think about it, all of a sudden they'll say, oh, wait, my grandmother was like that. Or, oh, my Aunt Sally, she was like that. And when they start to think about their family and start to go back, and then they find, I've had people where it's only as adults where their family will finally admit that the things had happened. Like they won't comfort the child and say, oh, yes, I know that it happened to me. So my answer to that question is that I do believe that is that. It doesn't mean that you don't have psychic or intuitive abilities if you don't have a family member. No, it just means that there are some people who seem to have a few generations where there's been a couple members in the family that they might call a witch, or they might call up whatever the name is the family would call them.
Yeah. And I have to agree, because as I had said, my mother had, and this was shared, and I had spoke with her about it, was he says, my mother woke him up just crying hysterically. And he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, her favorite aunt had passed away. And he goes, no, they would have called. And she goes, I'm telling you, went back to sleep. The phone rang and it was true. And then my father, he said he remembered waking up and his best friend, who at the time was drafted to the Vietnam War. And he said he saw him fully dressed right in front of him. And my dad goes, what are you doing here? He goes, everything's going to be okay. He's like, what are you talking about? He didn't even realize. And then he found out, I think a few days later, that he was killed in action. And so right there, I was like, okay, it makes sense.
Not only that, I was speaking with Dr. Dean Radin a little while ago, and he was discussing about how, yes, he was doing an experiment and he was trying to find subjects to be in the control group that were people who had not had one psychic or unusual paranormal experience in their life. And it was very hard for him to gather that group of people together. He did it, but he said he couldn't believe how hard it was, because it often is in a death that some people whose eyes maybe haven't been opened, it's often in a death where they become, and it can spark a new thing for them, of them realizing that there might be something more than just the body and what we see in front of us.
Yep. And that is such an awesome question, Robbie. And I want to say hello, Selena. Sorry, it took me a while to get to you, but I told you, I promise. So I when I read this and I was just like, oh my goodness. Can you share with us your experience at the Woodstock Festival in 1969? That is mind blowing.
Well, actually, here's this book that we spoke about. Here's the book that I got to be in. And well, first of all, I was 14 years old at the time. And I went with 4 guys that were, the guys that lived on my block, where we grew up in Flushing and Queens. Mm-hmm. So we were in New York, and so we weren't far from the festival. And we went ahead for a little trial run to figure out back roads, because we knew that we expected 10,000 kids or something. We didn't expect 400,000 to 500,000 kids.
Right.
So we went ahead and we checked out the grounds, and it was 2 weeks before the festival, and they were rebuilding the stage because they had to they could not do it in the original town of Woodstock. And then there was another place, I can't remember it. And anyways, it ended up being in Bethel, mm-hmm. and upstate New York. And when we went up, it was just the most beautiful rolling green farmland, mm-hmm. and the stage was being built. And we met this guy, Chip, one of the organizers of the concert, when he was down there building. And I ran around the hills laughing and wearing this, bright, beautiful paisley flying kind of shirt. I used to call them flying shirts.
Yeah.
And we had no idea what we were going to be coming back to do, but we knew we needed a lot of food. We needed a lot of drugs. We needed a lot of blankets and water and things. And so we went back, and my friend borrowed his brother's Chevy Impala, and it had this huge trunk in it. So we could, mm-hmm. take as much of everything as we wanted. And I was in charge of collecting the money for the tickets, which when we got there, we found out there was no ticket booths. All the fences were all down. There was no place to pay tickets. And we had packed enough food and water, and I guess we had quite an assortment of drugs. And so we had enough to share with everyone, and we never had a want where some other people just kind of went with their sleeping bag or whatever and didn't. So we were very prepared.
Right.
And it was my first camera that I'd ever had. And I shot this photo. I'll show you. This is John Sebastian. I don't know. He was famous for a song called Darling Be Home Soon. Anyhow,
Oh,
this is how close we were. Oops, I don't know how to
oh.
do this camera this way. So
There,
this
there
is a
you go.
photo.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is in the book. This is a photo I took. That's how
Oh,
close to the stage we sat. So you can
wow.
see how close that is. It was like being little sardines in a can.
I can
And
imagine.
I was lucky that the guys had spotted a log and they carried a log all the way in. So we got to sit on a log instead of
In
directly
the
in the
mud.
mud, which was really nice. The mud had a definite distinctive smell and it like would hold your shoe. So when you tried to walk, your
Yes.
shoe would be
Yep.
mud, you know.
Yep.
And here's another. So I'm really honored to have my photos published in a book,
Oh,
50 years later.
that's amazing.
This is I wish I could figure this out, but this is
You,
John no, this is Country Joe. And this is
mm,
singing the Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die rag, which was, we were all protesting the war in Vietnam.
yes.
And so to have 400,000 people singing at the same time, give me an F, give me a U, give me a C, give me a K, what's that spell? And everybody's screaming.
Yeah.
It was all, in protest against, the war. I had such a, at the time, I only smoked pot, so I didn't do all the different drugs.
Right.
I think I did a little bit of some kind of a speed or something to keep me awake for half of this. But other than that, had not taken acid or done those things yet.
Right.
So I was just smoking a lot of pot and we had a lot of hash, which was very popular in New York.
Uh-huh.
And we shared everything. So everything we had, we shared with all the people around us. It was such a loving and giving and caring environment. And it was filled with adversity. There was no gas. People couldn't leave. You were stuck there. If you got hurt, you had to find your way to a little tent somewhere. And there would be kind people that all volunteered to help take care of you. It was not
Wow.
like, I've been to a lot of rock and roll concerts because I was a rock and roll
Yeah.
girl there doing all these
Yeah.
things, but there was nothing like the Woodstock experience. And they put a quote, the last page in the book that I was in. So here's the quote, and I'll just read it to you because it really sums up. Right in front to the left of me, a guy came up and painted "We Are One." It was painted across the fence, right to the left of the stage, right in front of the Woodstock stage. And I thought that those 3 words captured what that event was. And I've never felt that kind of experience ever again. I've been to other rock concerts. Nothing was like that. I went to see Led Zeppelin and people were kind of violent and throwing things. I mean,
Mhm.
which ones
Yep.
but this was it was truly a once in a lifetime experience.
Uh,
And I'm very grateful. My life changed after that. A year later, I dropped out of high school. I moved to California with my boyfriend that I'd gone to Woodstock with, and who wasn't my boyfriend then. And we went and we came and lived here in California, and I've been here ever since.
uh,
And anyways, it was a fabulous experience, and the musicians and the whole thing was a lifetime memory that I got to go back there exactly 50 years later for the release of this book.
uh,
And the author and the producer were so kind to me and asked me to be on the panel. So I got to meet all these different other people, and I
oh,
just really had there I was, and it rained exactly when we came out after the talk. It was very complete Woodstock experience.
oh. I mean, I have to share this hilarious story. My ex, his grandfather was a jazz musician. And
Mhm.
so when he retired, he worked at one of the biggest um, music equipment store, and he would tune everything. It didn't matter what it was, he would tune it. And so this gentleman came into the store and needed his guitar tuned. And they said, well, the best person, he is retired, but let me call him. And so he said, yeah, tell him to come to my house. And the hilarious part was my ex, his father he was going to Vietnam War, and he called to check on his parents, and his mom was very upset. And he's like, Mom, what's wrong with you? There is some black man in the garage, and your father and him are jamming out and getting stoned, and I'm just not happy. And it was Jimi Hendrix.
Oh
Because
my
he goes, who is it? And she goes, Jimmy, I think Hendrix or something. I don't know. She was livid that they were getting stoned. And when I learned that many years ago, I laughed so hard because I was like, yeah, I can see his grandmother did. Oh no. And his grandfather was the typical musician, ladies, drugs, alcohol. And he's carried it on to the day he died.
Well,
and I
what a
just,
wonderful memory.
yes, I loved it. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness. And actually, one of the paranormal teams I follow, her boyfriend is just, he loves Woodstock. He loved the whole thing. The musician, everybody. He finally was able to go and visit and actually look and see where it all took place. And he was so excited, and it just kind of rubbed off when you watched it. You had to be happy for him to see
Let
it.
me tell you the difference of when we went the 2 weeks later, and those rolling pastoral green hills were all gone, and it was just covered in bodies. I mean, coming upon that scene after you go through this crazy driving to get up there, and then you see, for as far as you can see, it's just all young people. It was a mind-blowing sight.
I loved your story because you don't run across that many people. So what a beautiful story. I mean,
Well, the funny thing was, the author of the book said that I was the muse that helped him to finish it, which he had said at that book signing. And the producer and I became like best friends. So I go stayed at her house when I went to do the Woodstock. She's come and stayed here. She came back with her husband. He helped fix a door at my house that I couldn't fix. She's in the publishing industry, and she was trying to help me to see if I could get. I'd written a book called Small, Medium, at Large, and so she's out there seeing if we can find somebody that might be interested in it. And we became friends over this Woodstock thing. And I met more friends of hers. There was a photographer there, and Amelia Rothschild, and she was the photographer of all the Fillmore East during those times. And she was, we shared we were staying all at her house together. So I got to meet her, and she gave me her book afterwards, which, with all the photos that she'd done and signed it. And we had a wonderful connection. So it almost felt like the 50-year reunion felt like what it was like in the old days, where you met people and you came together, and it was a lovely, beautiful experience, and they're your friends now.
Oh, that is so, what lovely and wonderful memories, and to share with your kids. I mean, such an important time.
I gave them each a copy of the book, and they were like, do I need this much?
Oh, I'd be like, yeah, oh, yay.
Maybe they'll put it on the coffee table one day, and one of their friends will say something about it in their house.
I mean, because it was a very important time in everything that was going on. So,
I was wearing a teardrop peace necklace that was given to me by my dearest friend, Sharon, who passed away during COVID in her 80s in Woodstock, because she ended up retiring there and living there in the actual town of Woodstock, because it's an artist and musician town. And I got to go to her house before I went to the reunion and show her the peace symbol necklace she had given me, printed in this book in the back part where the index is, and wearing it again. So I brought it back to the concert and wore it again. And it was and she had given it to me for my 12th birthday. So that was like a long history and sentiment in this beautiful teardrop peace necklace.
That is just amazing. I love it. Okay, so
nice memory.
I know. I love it. I was like, it has to be talked about. Because I love that. It's
But
just
for everyone out there, my hearing is just really getting bad now. So all those speakers and all that loud music
yes,
now I'm paying for it.
yes, yes. I think me and my husband both were like, you walk out and your ears are just ringing. You can't hear anything.
You're happy about it. You don't think like
Yes.
you're invincible.
Uh, okay. So, are you able to take items, and hold them, to see what like the history or who had it last?
Well, I didn't know that I could do that, but I can. And I found
Oh,
out um, at an International Remote Viewing Association conference, the IRVA conference, and it was some years ago. And there was this woman named Bev Jager, who was a very well-known woman because she's passed on also. She was a very well-known woman because she was one of the, I think I might be the only, I'm not sure, back in those days, but she worked with the police departments around the country for over 30 years doing uh, getting information from them with objects, or maybe not with objects, but she would do psychic work with the police department. They would never acknowledge that she had done the work
right.
because it makes them, whatever the reason is that they have. And so she had come to the conference and she was doing a demonstration about how matter can hold information or energy. And she had 100 pennies that were like just right from the shiny minted fresh ones.
Hmm.
They had not been into circulation yet. And she gave them to a person and she said to everybody in the room, I'm going to go around and each give you one of these pennies. And I want you to write down on a piece of paper what that penny tells you about the person. Is it a man? Is it a woman? What do they do? What's their work? And I thought, okay, this is interesting. And she said, I never let this person take the pennies off their body except in the shower. Otherwise, they slept with them in their pocket. They went everywhere with it. It was only on their body for this whole week.
Hmm.
So I get the penny. And when I get the penny in my hand, oh my God, I see a person that I'd had lunch with the day before. And I say, oh my God, it's the guy I had lunch with. But I didn't know that much about him. He was just a guest with other people that I was with. So I didn't really know him personally.
Hmm.
So I had just met him at this lunch. And all of a sudden I start writing these things. He's a lawyer. He's got this. He does that. La, la, la. So I don't remember what all the instances were, but I wrote it all down. And then she said, when anyone's finished with their paper, then go out of the conference room. And in the small room in the back, the person is sitting there and you can meet them and show your paper and they will tell you whether you were right on or not. So I went in with it and I wrote on it, this is, oh God, what was his name? Oh, well, I can't remember his name right now, but I wrote down his name on it and said, he's the guy I had lunch with. And these are the things about him. And I go in with the piece of paper and I look and it's him. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe a penny could tell me all this information. So we had a good laugh. And they then asked me if I would ever like to do a missing persons case, because that's what they did a lot of. And when they did the missing persons case, they would give an object of the missing person and it would be sent around to like 5 or 6 psychics. And each person would write their impressions of that and then send it to Lance. His name was Lance. They would send it to Lance, or, because Bev Jager had passed on at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And he took over. And I was the only one in the group that didn't get the object. I think it was a hairbrush. And so all these different people get the hairbrush, then it gets sent on to the next person. They write their thing up. Then he looks at everything that everyone writes, and whatever they find that's completely in common, like if everyone says there was a dark warehouse, if everyone says warehouse in there, warehouse gets listed on the information for the police department.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it's done.
Wow.
So I didn't know that I could do this. And I didn't have a brush, but it was and it's not something I want to do, the missing persons things, because it's got you meet upon a lot of very heavy energy.
Yeah.
It can be very scary, and it can also be, for me, it's a little uncomfortable. For some other people, it might be sort of fine or whatever, but you can feel sometimes violence or death or
Yeah.
things that happened, and it's not a nice,
Yeah.
viewing. So those two experiences showed me that, yes, you can definitely hold an object and not hold an object, and also be able to detect things about things that might have gone on. But I do believe that things hold energy, and she taught me that with that penny.
That's amazing. Especially that you did work on some missing persons. And I agree, it is something like that is quite traumatic and difficult.
Well, another one I did, and I've only done a few of these. I'm not looking to be in missing persons or anything.
Right.
It's just that I find that I try these things, and then I find out if I can do them or I can't do them, and you don't know until you try.
Right.
So this was another one where a very well-known psychiatrist in Berkeley, I can't believe everyone I'm talking about has passed on, but he passed on too, but they were all in their 80s, and he had read my manuscript, A Small Medium at Large, and he said, I might call you one day. And I was sitting in my kitchen, and he calls me up, and he said, I have a client here right now, one of my patients, and he is missing his mother. And we were wondering if you could talk to him to see if you could find out where she is. And I'm sitting there thinking, I got the sponge and soap on my hands, and what am I going to do? How would I know when there's a missing person? But sure enough, when the son came on the phone with me, I asked him, the first thing I asked him was, did your mother have cancer? And he said, no, my mother was very healthy, hiker, backpacker, loved to be in the woods, fit, good shape. I said, when did you see her? He said, I saw her only, a few weeks before she went missing. I went to visit her in Colorado. And he said, we had a lovely visit. And then when I got home, sometime later, I got $700 in the mail from her. And I thought that was very strange because she didn't have very much money to send me this $700. He said, it's been 8 days and she's been missing and nobody has found her. And I just wondered what you think. And when he asked me that, I had all these images start popping up into me of where she was, but I didn't feel like, should I tell him these things that I think she's dead? I didn't feel like it was my right to say this. So I said to him, you're closer to her than anyone else. What does your gut feeling tell you? And he said, my gut feeling tells me she's not with me anymore. I said, well, you should follow your gut and see what other information there is. And can I speak to the psychiatrist? Puts the psychiatrist back on. And by then my heart's racing. And I'm saying to him, I don't know anything about missing persons. I said, but when you said this to me, I saw her and she was dead in a car, slumped over a steering wheel and off the side of the road where there was like a lot of big boulders. So he said to me, okay, thank you for your help. I said, I don't want to do anything to upset someone I don't know, and I wouldn't want to say the wrong thing. Maybe she's alive. I don't know. But, how do I know? So he calls me back 3 hours later and says, not because of the description I gave him, but the police happened to just find her, which matched the description I gave. So they found her in her car, slumped over her steering wheel on the side of the road where there was boulders. So he said, I think, you might have figured out, you saw where she was. And then he hangs up and he calls me back another hour later and says, the police have contacted me. They want to ask you a question. They want to know, do you think there was foul play? And I was so confident in what I saw that I knew there was no foul play. I said there was no negative energy. It wasn't scary like that. It had none of those feelings like that other one with the missing person with the warehouse. And I said, that's the only thing I can be 100% sure, I said, is this, nobody did this to her. This was not foul play.
Right.
So then the next day he calls to let me know that the police went back and searched her house again, and they found her purse and they found a letter. and she had written in the letter to her family that when she had been back in Berkeley, she didn't want to stay because she had been diagnosed with a very uncurable cancer. It wasn't even, it was at a point, it was so far gone in her body that there was nothing they could do for her. So
Right.
she did not want to suffer and have the family drained of funds and hire people to care for her. So she took her life in the car.
Ugh.
And it was, the whole thing is very emotional for me because I'm feeling
Yes.
sad for the son, and I feel, but I'm a very empathic kind of person.
Yes.
These are not things I really want to do, but if it helped him in any way during that day, I'm really glad that we had that conversation together. But as I said to your listeners, I didn't know that I could do that. Nobody asked me to look for a missing person.
It's funny because, my son is now at the age, he's 13, very close to being 14. And he's like, Mama, can you do this? Mommy, can you do that? Mama? And it's like, I don't know, son. I really have to give it a try and see. You never know. Like for me, I'm practicing on remote viewing. Um,
Uh,
yeah,
would you like to, do you know about the 2 apps to help you
I
train
sure
remote
do.
viewing? So
Yes.
should I tell your listeners about it?
Oh, yes, yes. They'll love
Okay.
it.
My husband is a computer scientist, graduate of Yale and MIT, got his PhD in AI at MIT. And the reason I met Russell Targ and Dr. Dean Radin was because my husband, David, was working for Paul Allen at a research think tank building in Palo Alto.
Mhm.
And they were looking for subjects, and I ended up becoming a subject for them. And I finally decided I would do things again. And that's when my whole world opened up to remote viewing and all these other things.
Yes.
So Russell asked my husband many years ago to do this first app, which is called the ESP Trainer. Let me see if we can. Here was my last one. I had outstanding, but
Ah.
that doesn't happen every time. You don't know. So let me see how I can reset. Reset. Okay, so the people see 4 colors on the phone, and there's a picture behind one of the colors. And so can you pick a color? What color do you think it's behind today, Kim?
I want to say green.
Oh, that's the one I wanted to say. Okay, let's see what happens with green. And green it is. So whoops. So you pick the right one. Now it's gone. It goes to the next one.
Oh,
But
wow.
shows you the picture. If you didn't get it, then it just comes back to the screen of 4. And then when you end up at the end of it's 24 pictures, then it gives you these scores: useful in Las Vegas, good beginning, or depending how many you hit. The teaching of it is that, and this was what they used. This is these are now on a phone app,
Mhm.
but these were used to teach the military and the trainings for remote viewing. But it was done in a box then with lights, 4
Yeah.
lights, so it was different then. So anyway, so Russell designed it, and my husband made what he wanted. So
Mhm.
what I find that this does, and I've used it for years, is that if I'm feeling like, I call it hot. When I'm feeling like I'm really getting a lot of images and psychic things are coming to me and I'm really on it, I this out and I start going like this and I'm getting everyone, and it's like
Oh,
comfort. What it does show you is the way that your mind is sort of tricking you, where instead of picking the color you're thinking, like we both thought green on that one right away.
mhm.
Well, sometimes you don't catch that flash, the one that just
Right.
zips by you, and you start to think, "Oh, what color is it?" And when you start thinking, that's when you don't get the right one.
Right.
It's when it's the one that slips by that just goes really quick
Yes.
like a flash.
Yes. Because
So
I was going to say blue, but
right.
I was like, wait a minute. Wait, no. The first one, because that's why I had a pause, and I was like, the first color was green, but I wanted, and so
So
wow.
that's how it teaches you. It's a free app, and people are, should, they can get it. I don't know. I'm not sure if it works on Android. That I can't
That one
guarantee.
is on Android.
Oh, it is. So that one's
Yeah.
Android and Apple phones, smartphones.
Yeah.
But the next one, the Stargate ESP
Oh,
trainer, that one is
his
only
iPhone.
on iPads and Apple phones. And
Because that one looks fun.
that one is really fun. I don't know if anyone can see the icon. It's a little oops. It's
Little eye.
the eye, there it is.
Yeah.
Stargate ESP. And Stargate was the name of the secret program at SRI at Stanford that Russell was one of the founders of. And so he has permission now, everything's been declassified, to be able to use that name. And this is also a very good trainer. And this one's a little different than the other one. In this one, there are 2 questions. You answer the 2 questions, and then you decide on the third which picture you think of the 4 photos that comes up it is. It's a little different because you have a little bit more involvement in it.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know how long it's going to be free, so anyone interested should download it soon.
Yes.
That
Because
was
that
released
one's
this
fun.
year. I think it was about 6 months ago. That one's been around. So anyhow, little plug for Russell's apps and for my husband doing his little computer
Yep.
work.
There you go. Yeah. And you had already answered the question because I was going to say, how did you meet him? But you met him through your husband with them.
They were looking for subjects, and so they interviewed me. Was supposed to be an hour interview, but it ended up being 2.5 hours. And at the end, the both of them told me I should write a book. And that's what inspired me to sit down and write a book, though I never published it. I wrote the whole book after they told me, and I'm so glad they did, because as you get into your, I'm in my mid 60s now, your memory isn't as sharp as it was in your 40s so I wrote the book a long time ago, and there's so much more to add. But I was really inspired by their telling me to do this, so I actually did it.
And what I found interesting, because you came in the tail end of the Stargate project.
No, it was over a few years.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Maybe 3 years. It had been ended, I think.
Oh, wow.
Might have been 2 years, something like that.
Because before I even knew who you were, I had, my husband had mentioned something, and he's like, you had a thing with the government with, psychics and mediums and all that. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, look it up. And I was actually looking, and I was looking at all the videos and everything. And
did you see Third Eye Spies?
You know what? When I watched your video with Russell Tartt, and that was, yes, I have. Oh my gosh. That was one thing I was going to tell everybody to go and watch. Third Eye Spies is awesome.
It's on YouTube. I think they can find it on
it's
YouTube.
Free.
It's free. And I'm in the extras. They have an extras thing with him and I doing a remote viewing. Russell and I do wonderful remote viewing together. We've been doing it since 1998. I have I can show you a remote viewing we did. I just did another one for him this week. What he does is when he has an object that he wants to see, whether it would be a good object for, a remote viewing class or for him to, work with somebody with, he calls me up and asks me to remote view the object to see whether it's a good object for remote viewing. So I guess I'm a remote viewing object tester. I'm going to plug this in.
Yes, Sabre, you got to check it out. Watch Third Eye Spy. It's free on YouTube. It's a movie, and everything got declassified. So he was finally able to tell his story. I recommend everybody to go watch it. It is nicely done.
And it's very informative. So he calls me up and he says, all right, I've got something new in my hand and I want you to tell me what it is. So I tell him, oh, it's colors. I said, it's beautiful colors and they're all flashing up. I said, it's like when you're a kid and you hold sparklers in your hand and the sparklers are all emitting reds and blues and yellows. And he says to me, well, you're 99% correct. He said, so I'm going to send you the object. So he sends me the object. And I hold it in my hand. And it's this LED, it's flashing light. It's something you hold in your hand.
Yeah.
And it's not a sparkler, but it's
I mean,
it's actually made by some computer scientists who like to make colorful things besides all the inventions and other things that he did. So we have fun like this, Russell and I. It's a fun thing. We just did another one this week, but I don't want to talk about it because it's his new object, and I don't want to tell, in case he's got other people, in case somebody else.
Right.
But I did I got a good score on that one also. So and every time he does it, I always say, I said, I just had lunch. I don't know if I can remote view instantly what's in your hand. But every time I do. So we have a very good record of this.
Now, how old is he?
He's going to be, I think he's 86 now. He's either 86 or he just turned 87. COVID has set us all back on birthdays.
Yes, I know.
We used to celebrate or visit or, but somewhere in there.
Your interview with him, I found so intriguing because I was like, he is sharp as a tack. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like,
he is. And he's been watching my podcasts. I guess this is probably a time I should tell everyone that I have a podcast that I launched September 1st. It's the first time. I never thought I would do something like this, but it seems to be going very well. And I was starting off with people. In the beginning, it's mostly people I've known for 20 years.
mm-hmm.
But now I've been doing interviews with people I've just met or I've never met them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 15 shows completed. I've only have 7. Dean Radin was my one that just aired this last week. It's every other week. And if people go to YouTube and type a small, medium, at large with Gail Heisen,
Mm-hmm.
they'll go to the right place. If you just type a small, medium, at large, you'll find other things might come up that aren't me.
Right.
Got to have the name in there.
Yes.
And I have 623 subscribers, and I only started September 1st. I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, but it made me happy.
So Saper has a question. Do different locations affect ESP differently, or does it not make a difference?
Well, to any of your listeners, anything that I answer is only my personal experience.
Right.
I'm not saying these are the rules of parapsychology or, I'm not an intellect or any of this sort of thing. I'm just speaking from my own life experience. For me, absolutely different places affect me tremendously. When I was pregnant, which I did 3 times with 3 different beautiful children who are all grown adults, during pregnancy, it's like a veil is lifted or something, and the psychic energy and the things that come in and the dreams and I always know I know if it's a boy or a girl, I can see them. It's really a tremendous link in pregnancy. And I'm sure other women would say the same during their pregnancies.
Yes.
But going to powerful places does, for me, I've been to different places around the world. And when I go to that place, something happens in me and I have an experience. I start, I've known some of them to be Kundalini, where like a tremendous amount of energy comes surging through my body. And all of a sudden I start seeing these visions of things that happened in that actual place. When I traveled around Europe, during my first pregnancy, and I was, I think, 21 at the time. If we'd go into these castles where there had been torture I would run out screaming. I mean, so for me, places definitely do affect what's happening to me. It doesn't make me have more ESP or more, it's the place itself has powerful energy.
When you say that something that really horrendous, negative, like you said, if people are being tortured, that's so strong, you just, for some reason,
it doesn't matter that it's hundreds of years ago.
Right.
energetic field of whatever that is, if you're sensitive. Now, another person could walk in there and they just see the prison cell or whatever, and nothing happens. Another type like myself, sensitive, more empathic kinds of people, will walk in and start crying or feeling like, oh my God, I have to rush out of here. I'm scared. You have different emotional feelings that will happen in places like that. I'm a much, I've had a lot more experience since then. I wouldn't be quite as scared as I was, I think, if I
Right.
returned to some of them now. But at those times, those were frightening places, and they felt it. You felt it.
Like um my husband's city was bombed 3 times during World War II. And then the Germans took over, and I remember this one location, and I can tell you still to this day, I will not go in. And we would always get stuck in traffic. It's an old prison in the city center, and we would get stuck, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, can we move? Can we move? And husband's like, what's your problem? I was like, you don't understand. Bad stuff has happened in there. I can hear screaming. People are being tortured. I smell blood. I said, not only that, there is something dark that has latched on to that such horrendous thing. And I was like, I'll never go in there. And he thought well, he didn't think I was crazy, but he was just like,
Right.
So he talked to a historian, and the historian said, yeah, you didn't know. He's like, when the Germans took over, they took all the politicians out of City Hall and put them in the prison and tortured them there. And so my husband came home, and he's like, well, you did it again. He's like, how? And I was like, I can't explain it, but I was like, I don't know why it is for me. I always end up getting the really awful side of life when it comes to that kind of thing. I did have one that was not bad. It was just, I stopped, we were in the park, and I said, I hear children crying. I said, I can feel their fear, they're shaking, they're screaming, they are wailing. And my husband's like, did anybody die? And I said, no, nobody's died. No, this is what I talked to a historian friend, and he said when the sirens would go off to alert everybody, the people in the city center sent their children to the park because they knew that part wasn't being bombed. And my husband came back and he goes, how? And I said, I guess it's just that heavy emotion that just kind of the ground soaked up and won't let go. I can't explain how it happens. It is just the weird thing. But I agree with you, especially being in Europe and how old everything is.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different old energy, but even when it's new energy, like there are some people that live in New York that cannot still this many years later go to Ground Zero or to the area where the buildings came down. They cannot do that. I have ESP with my son also. His father doesn't have it.
That's a tricky one. So she's saying she has ESP. Would her son have it, even though the son of her father, the son, getting it all mixed up, even though his father doesn't have it?
I don't think it has anything to do with that. Neither my father or mother had any type of extrasensory perception. So, whether it's one person or both persons or no persons, it has to do, her son is his own individual. And, all you have to do if you want it to nurture these things are very simple, is start listening to your inner voice. Let your inner voice become louder instead of squashing it down and saying, oh no, I can't do that. start listening to it. And the, if she thinks her son might have psychic abilities, she can do things to let him feel comfortable and nurture that. And that would be the thing to do, not to be worried about, that has nothing to do with one parent being that way and one parent not being that way. And also, I find with kids, like when I had taken a spoon bending class at one of the Remote Viewing Association conferences, and I bent a fork into, all these twirled up things. I have it over here. And
I love this. I love this.
I don't know if you can see the fork.
Oh, yes.
It's all bent.
Oh.
You see, that's not, I'm not that strong that I can.
Right. No, I mean, because those are tight curls.
Right. They're tight curls. I didn't believe in that until I went to this class. And then and I'm not a bender particularly, but I was able to do this and have this experience. So when I came home, we laid out silverware and I was having my children, I'm yelling at them, bend, bend, bend. And so there's fun, like exercises and things that she could do with her son, and, and nurture that part, or just even open up the possibilities. You find sometimes, depending what age the person is, they may be, if they're young, then it's easy. If they're older, then you might have to, tell them, just play with it, have fun, don't worry, whatever happens, happens.
My thing was, when my son was 3, he because his bedroom's upstairs, my bedroom's downstairs, and I just hear him screaming. And I come to him and I was like, "What's wrong with you, baby?" And he goes, "There's a witch down there." So, baby, that's not a witch. It's a witch. Baby, that is your great aunt who's watching over the house. And she's watching over you. And I asked her to do this. And he goes, "She looks like a witch. Baby, she's an older woman." So I've always, tried to make it where it didn't look, what? Looks like your camera was unplugged.
Mine?
Well, honey.
Hold on. Technical thingy. Hold on.
Go figure. Well, I'll go ahead and do this. Robbie says, "I think a lot more people have psychic abilities, but like you said, they don't nurture it, so it fades away."
It's also, I think everybody has psychic abilities. In other cultures, being telepathic or being psychic is a way of living. It's not considered anything special or something you're supposed to say, "Oh, I'm this or I'm that." It's that people are used to communicating that way, but we've shut off a lot of that kind of information in, we have technology, we have the instant, we can call somebody instantly. Before we had technology like that and cell phones, I used to send a psychic message to my dear friend Julio, who's a Huichol Indian in the mountains of Mexico, where there isn't phones for, 10 hours away or whatever. And he would get the feeling, know that we needed to talk. We'd call each other, and it would be, in the old days, you had a regular old phone. There was no cell phone, but we would have a communication that way, saying, "Call me, I need to speak to you." And the message would be received. So I think that a lot of people think that, "Oh, I have nothing. None of these things could ever happen to me. I'm not psychic." It's not true. You can be these things. And Russell's shown it over and over again to, large groups of people where they're there, and he says, "You can remote view and I can show you how." And they sit down, and in 15 minutes, the people are drawing amazing things that are very similar to what the object is. And so, and they didn't take any fancy course and they didn't do anything, but they get awakened to the fact that, "Oh, I can do this." And I think that's that attitude of saying to yourself, "Oh, I can do this. I can trust my intuition. I can trust my gut." Sometimes they say that's the other brain is in the gut, the belly brain. It gives you information.
Yep. And Sabre says, "Okay, that is really good to know. Thank you. I do let him do things that help him with that. I admit it does freak his father out." And then, of course, my husband says, you know, get him into bending forks. And she's like, no, no, no. My luck, he'll fly across the room. Hello, Kate. Kate has something that says, sometimes I was able to pick up images where a missing woman was without knowing anything about the area and later found out it was right. I wish I had more control over it.
You mean it just pops in? Is she wondering about I don't know how to tell her how to control that, if that's the question.
Yeah.
No, not a question, statement.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go. Because I was like, oh, I say just work on it if that's something that interests you, and it's not too heavy for you. You don't have to necessarily do like a missing person.
What you couldn't do, what you can do is you can keep a little journal and just write about the things, so that it's sort of like a way of expressing what you've seen, and it makes it, you put it down within, and the thing about handwriting like that, and then you have a little journal of how many of these experiences you may have, and then
That's
you can
awesome.
compare later to, oh, this one matches up to something I saw in the newspaper, or this matches up to something that happened to my friend, and that will give feedback to your own self by writing those things down, if she would do that.
Yeah, that's like she said, that's a great idea. It is. I didn't even think about that. That is,
In fact, I can tell her a quick story if she's still listening.
yep, she's here.
When I was doing that Dr. Gale thing, it was a woman in New Orleans, and she would see deaths before they would happen in complete detail. And she was
Oh.
afraid to go to the police or anyone, because there's always the fear, and rightly so, that you will be accused of having something to do with the
Yep.
murder or the death, because how else the police are going to say, how else did you know that?
Right.
So that has kept a lot of people from not sharing that information with the police department. But this woman was so phenomenal about this, because they would be in the headlines, 2 days later, everything that she would write about would then come out in the newspaper. So I encouraged her, and it turned out that she was not far from where that Psi Squad group, the people that train people to find, work with people and stuff. They had somebody that was right near in her neighborhood. It was like almost, so it was a mile away or whatever. And I was able to connect her to them, and she went on to not have to carry all this and share it with that group, and then they can move it on. And she was protected by not having her name added to any police reports or this kind of thing. And she really, I have never seen anything like what she would do, because they were not people she knew. They were just people that would suffer some kind of horrendous murdering. And that's not pleasant, that she would see all that, and in complete detail, the color of their hair, and so that was hard for her to live with that. And I'm just so glad that I got connected to her, and I was able to show her a place there that could help her. But then my husband and I decided, we had never been to the jazz festival, and we decided to go there, and she decided to come and meet us, because she didn't live in New Orleans. She lived, like an hour or so away or somewhere.
Right.
And so we met down there, and she was the same. I'm 4'11" and 3/4, which is why we call the small medium. And she was about 4'10". So when the two of us met each other, and her husband and my husband were like almost 6 feet, and we walked around the whole jazz festival together. It was our only time to meet each other and spend this time. But that all happened just from doing these emails, trying to help her out with her thing. And we just had a lovely connection. And we were both two little small people walking around the jazz festival together.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So that's the same with my podcast. I'm meeting such interesting people, whether I'm a guest on their show or they then become a guest on my show. It's bringing all sorts of wonderful community to me. And at a time when you're spending more time at home, it really is a special thing to be able to have these conversations with people. And I love that you have one where people can actually ask questions at the same time.
Yeah, that was my thing. Is I wanted to let people know because, you know, my husband got used to it. I warned him ahead of time, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah," because he's one of those. In the beginning, I don't believe in anything at all, and as he termed it, she pulled me into the paranormal. And I said, I can't help it. Because, like, when you said pregnant, I can remember being pregnant and I could just feel energies just kind of coming into our house and pinging around. And my husband was, our dog was picking up on it. And I would just pat him on the head and go, Bruiser, it's okay. They're just here to visit and they're going to leave. And he would calm down. My husband's pacing. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I don't know. There's just some energy. And it was bouncing off the walls because, the homes are narrow in Holland and it's bouncing off the walls. He's walking. And I'm like, calm down. He goes, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. That's called your first paranormal experience.
My first husband did not believe in any of the things. We were married for 20 years. He did not believe all the things that I would tell him. And he would kind of screw me up a little bit, even though I know he didn't realize he was doing that. But I would say that he flies and teaches. He teaches people how to fly small airplanes. And in the beginning, when he was learning to fly, I woke up and I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "I saw you were in the flight and your door opened while you were taking off." And he said, "Oh no, that never happened. Oh no." A year later, he says to me, "When you told me that had happened to me that day, I just never wanted to tell you. I couldn't believe that." So we'd have all these stories where I would tell him things and he'd say that they're not true. And then a year later, he'd say to me, "It was true, but I just couldn't say anything." Now that I've been studied by scientists and I have my name on some of these research papers and we're still friends and very close, now he doesn't ever say those things. Because when I get involved with someone in an intimate way or not, I can sense sometimes danger that they're in. So even though we weren't together anymore, when he'd go on these amazing exotic trips, because he goes to very remote places around the world, he's like an explorer. And I would be home in here and all of a sudden be going, "Oh my God, this happened to him." So what I started to do is write down the dates of when I would have the thing and what would happen to him. And when he'd come back from the trips, I'd say, "On this day, you were terrified for your life." He'd say, "That's when we were in the crevasse. And all of a sudden we had snow blindness and we couldn't get out. And I thought I was never going to see anybody again, So I think he has a different attitude now about this. But when we were first together, it was like, "Oh, no, I didn't know." And then family members, I would always know the birth of the child before the child be born. I'd say, "Oh, you're having a girl," or "You're having," and I was never incorrect in my, it's only a 50-50, but I was always pretty right on. But my sister calls me up one day and says, "I don't understand. How come you haven't had a dream? I'm having a baby soon, and you have had no dream." So I said, "Okay, well, I'll ask for a dream. You guys always made fun of me, So I went to sleep and I said, "I need to know what my sister Lori is going to have." And in the dream, I get a phone call and I pick up the phone. And that's when I always know if I get a phone call in a dream, that's direct information. That you follow what that says. So, I mean, for me, not for someone else. So in the phone, it says, "Yes, the girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces." And I said, "Okay." And I hung up. And the next morning, after I wake up, I call my sister and I say, "You're going to have a girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces." He says, "All right, we'll see if you're right. We'll see." And her husband are in the delivery room and she's having a cesarean. And I tell her the baby's 8 pounds, 6 ounces. This is a few weeks before the baby's even reached 8 pounds, 6 ounces. And she has a baby girl, 8 pounds, 6 ounces. She said her and her husband looked at each other and they said, We won't doubt you anymore. We'll make fun. You know, they.
And
So-
see, this is why I wanted to create this, because there is so many stories out there besides people who have medium abilities, all that. I mean, I've interviewed a man that rented a home, had nothing to do with the paranormal at all, and the home was haunted, and what he went through, and that was a 5.5 hour long interview, because
Wow.
it was that long of a story, and nobody had let him actually just, tell it. And I said, we'll go as long as we need to. And it was about a 5.5, almost 6 hour interview, but it was so intriguing. I mean, I didn't even lose my subscribers that were in there. They were still just going off, and there's so much more people that build paranormal equipments, and I like the whole roundabout, because for a long time there, and it's still today frowned upon. I mean, I have some families that aren't particularly happy, that I'm openly talking about my experiences, but other people's experiences, and that's the whole, I mean, it's just nice. It's nice to connect with people. It's nice to show people what it's out there. And
I tell you, I don't feel special in any way, shape, or form.
oh my
I
goodness.
am listening to other people's stories, and all I can say is, "Oh, that's just like me." Oh, that's. I mean,
Right.
I'm feeling like, oh, these are such common things, and they're some of them are so identical that you like look at the other person. And I just met you on a podcast,
Right,
but
right.
that happened, and then that, and then that. It's an unusual. So it's like the community. I find,
Yep.
and it lessens the mystery or the feeling of like, oh, nobody else does this. You don't
Or
feel
even the
alone.
negative, even the negative.
Right. You have somebody to help, somebody to share that with, and say, I had this scary experience. So did I. And they can say how their body got icy cold or their hair stood on end, and you feel a comfort. It's not like you want anyone else to be miserable, but I'm just saying you feel a comfort in both having a similar experience. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. I'm just
Right.
sharing these stories with people in hopes that in some ways it inspires or heals or whatever it does to stimulate them.
Yep. I want to welcome FM Perspective. Thank you for coming in. So, okay, our the next question I want to get to is, how was your first remote viewing experience?
My first remote viewing experience, first of all, I had never heard the word remote viewing before.
Right.
So I just was asked, would I like to come in and do a remote viewing experiment with Russell? Because Russell and Dean had something called the Phenom Project at Interval Research where I had met them. So I said, I don't know what remote viewing is, but I'm happy to come in and do whatever you ask me to do, to try or whatever, So I came into their office, and there wasn't really any room to, they had their two desks in there. But my husband, who had been hired very early on, had a huge office with a desk and lots of carpet and all over the floor. So I would go in there and lay on the floor because that's where I felt like I could go into a peaceful kind of state or just sort of relax. I don't do anything in preparation in my mind or anything like that. I just lay down. And so then Russell said to me, this is all he said to prepare me to do a remote viewing. I'm going to show you a picture that's in the computer. It will not be selected until 3:00. It'll come out of 300 National Geographic photos of places in the world. And I want you to sit down, lay down. While I was laying down, I want you to draw what you think that picture is going to be, even though it hasn't been selected yet. It's 1:00 right now. And here's a pencil. And he does a very wonderful way he guides you through it. I don't know. He just has he has a way of making you feel like whatever you do is going to be fine. Just do what comes to you, relax, and just tell me about the picture you see. And at that time, they were teaching me that you don't describe it. You don't say Eiffel Tower, or you don't say this is.
Right.
All we want you to do is draw the shape of the object, or what feelings do you have, what colors, what designs, any things that you see that are in the picture, but don't name it. They don't want you to name it. And they also taught me then about something they call it AOL, analytical overlay. And that's where your mind jumps in and says, oh, I see a metal pointy thing going upward. It's the Eiffel Tower, so that's where they say, don't say the Eiffel Tower, just keep saying the structure and draw what you're seeing.
Right.
Because then once you say the Eiffel Tower, then all of a sudden this image of the Eiffel Tower comes into you, and you're not really seeing necessarily all the other things in the photo. It can mislead you. So I did a very successful remote viewing on the first time of doing the remote viewing. Russell said I had a very good attention to detail and things that would be in the picture, but I cannot draw anything. And I'm like a stick figure kindergarten level of drawing. And so I'd write down and put an arrow next to it and say, that's a bridge, or that's a something. And what I did not know, but found out later in this experiment, because we did, as I said, 20 trials, and I would go there I think it was on Tuesdays. I'd go down to Palo Alto every Tuesday. We'd meet at a set time, and we would do one remote viewing. Then we'd go out and have lunch, which is how our friendship began. And then we'd come back and do the second remote viewing. And we did that for 10 weeks. Then all those remote viewings are given to a group of judges, and they judge whether what do they think? Do they think she got the target? Is she really drawing it? Is it a description of it? They write down and score each one.
Right.
Well, I kept saying things about some of the photos where I'd say, the picture would come up and I'd say, I saw cars there. I know there were cars in it. And then another picture, I'd say there were boats in it. There were people in this other one. And next time the picture would come up, there'd be no boats, no cars, no people. And I'd feel like, God, I can't believe I'm seeing this and it's not there, right? Well, after the judging was done, and I met with one of the judges, which was Ed May, and he said to me, oh, we've erased those out of the photos. We found that it distracts people in remote viewing, so we have no people, no boats, and no cars. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm drawing these pictures and I'm putting in a car. So I'm seeing things in pictures that it's been erased out of.
Right.
And that was my remote viewing. I know some of them, I think twice, Dr. Radin showed some remote viewing I did to the Navy when he was there speaking at some sort of a conference at the Naval Academy. And he said that I was very popular there, that they liked my, my remote viewings. I couldn't imagine the Navy looking at my stick figures,
That's awesome. That's so wonderful.
So did that answer the question?
Yes, it did.
It's not coming across my screen. I don't see any questions.
I've got questions off to the side. So
okay, so
this is the interesting thing that I learned from when you and Russell Turk were talking on your podcast, and he created the Faraday cage, which a lot of
I never heard that.
Yeah, he was saying that he created the Faraday cage because he felt like someone was listening in. Like it was
he didn't create the Faraday cage. He decided they needed to use that to prove to science that there was no radio
contamination
going in there. And I have to say, when I first saw the Faraday cage that I sat in many a time for different experiments, it freaked me out at first. Well, I owned a catering company. I just rented out now my commercial kitchens, but I was a caterer, and I put a walk-in there. And anyone who's in the restaurant industry or food industry knows what a walk-in is. It's a very large refrigeration with a big, heavy door with big metal handles on it that you open up, and and the persons can store their food in there, but you're in a sealed box when they shut the door. Well, it looked just like a walk-in when I saw this Faraday cage, because it had the big metal bar on the front and the big heavy door. But inside, Dean had it all outfitted with curtains and a lamp and a
Oh,
table. And so you felt like you're really walking into a little tiny living room scene or something.
right.
So it made you feel comfortable. I think there was a little plant in there. And at first, when they locked the door, I freaked out because I get claustrophobic or scared that I won't be able to get out. So he said, no, there's a handle there you can open. I said, well, let me make sure I can open and close this door myself. And I can get in and out of the Faraday cage. So I said, okay, I can do the experiments now.
Right. Now, he had mentioned that he was kind of shocked that everybody that used the Faraday cage really enjoyed it.
Well, because it seals out all those electromagnetic field things. And, so you're in like a very quiet, peaceful space.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine that. That sounds, because you get all the stuff that's coming at you and you're trying to filter things. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, what an experience that is. FM Perspective has said here, there is a remote viewing site where you can go and use their practice targets, which is pretty cool. Are you talking about the phone app? Huh. That'll be interesting.
It might be the online. There's an online place that I think it's being redone now, so I'm not sure, but it was called Got Psi. PSI is Psi. So it's GOTPSI.org, I believe. And it was something Dean had set up many, many years ago, back in the interval research days. And when I spoke to him about it recently, he said they were upgrading and because now there's more newer technology on the computer and this sort of thing. But it's a wonderful place to go and play all these different psychic games. And you're scored, and they have remote viewing in it. And you can compete against other people if you want, or against yourself. And you can be your own name, or you can make up your name. But it's a very fun place to go and explore different. They have a Garden of Dreams in it, I think, there's all sorts of different fun things to do in that.
I'll have
So
to check
maybe
that
that's
out.
what they're thinking, but we'll have to check it out because I'm not sure if it's up again or what exactly on that.
Oh, definitely. So I have a really interesting question for you, because I'm a firm believer that children, just because they're so innocent, they don't know, they're not corrupted, they don't know lies. I mean, they're just this
Sure.
innocent. Yeah. They are able to have their third eye is open. Let's just put it that way. Why do you think some people are able to hold on to their abilities from their childhood and others aren't?
Well, the first thing I would say would be like what we spoke about earlier, that they go and tell a friend or a parent or somebody that's an authority figure, whether it's somebody at a church or at a religious meeting or something. They share what's happened, or they tell about it in school, and the next thing they know, they put them on Ritalin, or they tell them they're schizophrenic, or things like that can happen, where the persons you think you can trust really don't help the child during that experience. I think it's hard to know when you go to seek that kind of thing as a child, what did you get met with?
Right.
So if your mother says to you, that's stories, don't tell me about this anymore, you're making it up, I don't want to know anything. What do you mean you're crying in the night and there's a figure in here? I don't see any figure in here. Go back to bed.
Right.
That's going to be how is it handled for the child. And there are some children that are just, they're just wide open. And then there's
Yes.
some children that have more fear or things that have been told to them so that they become like that. That
Mhm.
they're not going to listen to those voices.
Mhm. Oh, okay. So Sabra says, I just don't want to lose power. Oh, she's talking about a thunderstorm. I'm sorry. I just saw that she posted the thunderstorm's coming at her. For me, it's really interesting because I could hear and see things, and it if at 3, the first apparition did not scare me. It but it was still, there's a man in here kind of scare. Not, I didn't even realize or think that that was an apparition.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of faded away at around 7ish. But the minute I hit puberty, it hit me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And
You
I
mean
don't
more at puberty, you became more aware or less aware?
more.
Well, that would make sense because the body's now able to, become pregnant, and it's changed to an entire different kind of, physical form. Before that you were a girl.
Right.
Now you're able to bear children. It's a very different, connection to the
Right.
spirit world. Or
Because and now that you say that, it makes sense. Because I've run into other people that have abilities that said the exact same thing happened to them. They nothing happened from around that age, and then puberty happens, and it's like, what's going on here?
probably your dreams also changed then. Also, you might have had more, intuitive dreams, things.
Mhm. That is so interesting. I like that. Um, so the question I have, and I find that so interesting, is when did you start to feel comfortable coming out with your abilities, talking about them, especially, I mean, you have such a rich history. I mean, the people that you've met and worked with, and it just blows my mind.
Can you tell me the question again?
When did you feel comfortable coming out and talking more about?
Well, I've always been out. But and I've always shared my experience with either the husband that was laying next to me. So that's sort of like, as I told you, my husband is a scientist. And so this is like your husband when he was saying the things. This is my second husband. His paranormal things were limited. And after he got involved with me and started to have watching all these experiences happen and the things that would happen with me, he became a very positive, supportive, validating force. And I think that really helped me feel stronger about, when it's somebody like him who's a scientist and he gets switched over to say, I don't know, she's got gnarly powers.
Right.
There's something about that. I didn't have that support in my first marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So even though, I still love my first husband and we're very close friends, that hampered me in a way.
It makes a big difference.
Made it very difficult. And also because he would tell me that it wasn't true. So I kept saying, God, I thought that came from my place of knowing. And I was wrong again. And, I wouldn't find out till years later that I had been right. So I think that was uncomfortable. You know what I mean? But now when you're with someone who doesn't necessarily, he's actually, in fact, I thought he did a pretty good job bending a fork recently. So I'm saying it can inspire your partner, but when your partner supports you, I think that's one of the one things. And then he brought me to scientists. I would have never met these people if he didn't think
Right.
of his wife to share a story with them about me, because this was an internal request. This wasn't a, in a newspaper or something. This was just for the
Right.
people that were employed at this place. So he, suggested me up for this. So
Wow.
I would say in 1998, when I started to work with Russell and Dean, I think one day, I have never called myself psychic. I've never
No,
said that through
no,
all those years.
no.
But Dean said to me one day, as I said, so am I psychic? And he says, yes, you're very psychic. Now just go eat a sandwich and relax. So
Oh my God.
I think their support, my husband's support, and then all of a sudden for 20 years I'm involved in all these different experiments, and they just call me up out of wherever and say, oh, Gail, can you come down and do this? We want to see, they work with many people. I'm just one little drop in the bucket of a person that
Right.
they work with. But that work that we did together gave me a lot of support and a lot of validation. When you see computer graphs and they say, you see this is your heart rate, this is all went up and down here because you knew, you could sense that the dangerous photo was going to come.
Mhm.
It's showing me how my body physiologically does different things, reacting to different things that I haven't even been shown yet. So I learned so much about things I was able to do in the different experiments that they had me do. So but it's in the trueness of feeling whatever. It's only recently.
Yeah. It's funny because our stories are very similar because it was the same way. My ex was scared of the whole thing because his grandmother was open, and he'd walk in the door and she'd be like, oh, I was talking to your great uncle so and so, and he's like, I don't want to hear it. It freaked him. I think it scared him.
It
And
scares.
yeah, and so it kind of made me second guess things when I knew I shouldn't have second guessed things. And then I meet my husband, and he's just like, okay, well, he's like, you didn't go out of your way and force me. It was very natural and organic the way you pulled me into this. And he has just been absolutely supportive. And all
Well,
I did was,
when you can help them, like one time I left the house, and this was before the cell phone days,
mhm.
and I'm driving down the road, and I was going to do my errands, and I get to the second stop sign, and I say, oh my God, David needs me right now. I got to turn around and go back to the house. He's got some kind of problem. And I knew he had a very serious meeting that he had to be in time for. And it's a 2-hour drive from our house to Palo Alto. So he had a 2-hour drive, and he had a set time he had to be there. I turn around, I come back, I come to the front door, and I'm frantic. He said, I can't find my keys. I can't find my keys. I've looked everywhere. And I just bend down and I pick up the keys without even looking, and they sort of blended into this carpet thing. And I just picked them up and I handed him the keys, and he drives away. Those are kind of things that he's happy to know that, he doesn't sit there saying, oh, that was just luck. He's like, thank you, Gail. I'm so glad you turned around and came back and did that. There's times we avoided being in a car accident because I could see the accident before it's going to happen. But this isn't like, I don't live like this every day, have a million things happen.
Right.
But as far as a lifetime goes, I've had a lot. So I can't
Yes.
say that I haven't had, many, many, many experiences, and of all different kinds. And
Mhm.
you're always learning something. And you're,
Yes.
when you share these stories with other people, you learn. I just was listening to a story on a show I had been a guest on, and because I always listen to the podcast after I become on the people's shows, so then you start following them. And I'm listening, and they're talking about the white lady, how, and I had been to the Philippines, and I was there, and I was speaking to what would soon become my son's grandfather. And he's telling me about how, he's been terrified in his life because he's had the time where he sees the white lady. And I've talked in other cultures to other people, and often people have seen, when they see this ghost type impression, they see a woman dressed in white. Well, it turned out there was some era, I don't know when it was, if it was, 1920 or when it was done, but that when women would die, they would be buried in their white wedding gown. And I'd never
Oh,
heard or known of such a thing until I heard it on this podcast. And I thought, what an interesting thing that the people would vision a woman in a long white flowing gown. So
they,
we're learning every day.
yes, yes.
And also I find that, which you can see in like my first guest, Sally Rhinefeather, she's 91 years old.
And oh my gosh, I
You
watched
see,
that one.
my first podcast, she's the daughter of J.B. Rhine, who's the gentleman who, created the word ESP and who had the first parapsychological, university teachings at Duke University. He had his own center there. And now today they're off the Duke University campus, but that's another place. If people want to find out other things, they should check out the Rhine Research Center. I don't know exactly the website, but I know if you do Rhine Research, RHINE, and they have all kinds of classes and all kinds of things you can take there, and all very reasonable. It's a nonprofit, volunteer.
Her interview was so interesting.
And you wouldn't think she's 91 years old.
No.
Her brain is sharp as a tack. And
Yes.
then when I asked her to adjust the lighting, she just leaped out of her chair and was running around the room. And I was like, my God, you're so flexible. So I think that what I found in that people who are studying consciousness or things about these other areas, they all seem to be in incredibly brilliant minded places in their 80s and above. So, and they're still writing books, they're still doing research,
Yes.
their life is still stimulated. And I mean, they are aging, but you think they're 20 years younger than what they are.
Yes, absolutely. That's what kept blowing my mind is watching your interviews and everything. So now I have to, I love this story. You had a very embarrassing. I loved this story. I loved it.
We're talking about Amsterdam.
Yes.
Okay. How are we on time? It's 6
We got
minutes.
a little
left.
under 20 minutes.
Okay, so I didn't know I could do 2 hours so easily, but and it's been a joy sitting here talking with you. I feel so relaxed. I just want to say it's wonderful to be here on your show.
Thank you.
So this was a story that I had shared earlier with Kim when we were meeting each other on the phone before I become her guest on her show. My husband was asked to go to Italy he was working for a man who was doing computer things for a publishing company. In fact, the largest publishing company in Italy, Mondilat, something like that. And funny, I'll have to add a little Woodstock story into this story. On the 40-year anniversary of Woodstock, which would be 10 years ago, right before we were going to this trip to Italy, I had come inside. In fact, Dean was supposed to come to my house and play banjo that day. He's an amazing banjo player, and my husband's an amazing keyboard player. So then a couple of other people were coming, and we're going to have like just a little music jam.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Dean got a cold, and he said, I better stay home. I want to take care. And so we canceled the party. But I had still made these apple pies because I live in an apple orchard. I was making these pies in the oven, and it happened to be the 40-year anniversary of Woodstock. So I had the video playing in my living room while I was in the kitchen making the pies. And all of a sudden, and it's a 2-hour documentary, the film, all of a sudden I decide to walk into the TV. And for 40 years, but for at least 25 years, I had been looking for myself because I was in 10th row center.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was dancing, I was in the 4th row center. So I thought I had to be in some of these books or some of these films, and I never could find myself. I walk in the living room at that moment with my, spoon and my, cooking utensils in. And there I was on the stage in the 100th minute of the film. And I find myself on the 40-year anniversary only because the music jam got canceled. Otherwise, I wouldn't have looked at this in detail. And I just started to cry and my mouth fell open. I said, I was looking for a little fat old lady, but I was a beautiful flower child. The first thing I said when I saw it was, no wonder everyone wanted to have sex with me. I mean, and I'm looking at this beautiful child, this blonde hair glowing in this crowd of people. And so, of course, I was thrilled. So I ended up, anybody that came to my house, I had to show it to them, and I posted it somewhere. And so my husband was sharing it, and the people in Italy heard about it. And apparently in Italy, they honor the Woodstock thing very big still. So we're in this little town called Gorizia, and I go into I've come down from the bed and breakfast place, and I'm going to have breakfast, and I sit down, and there's nobody in the restaurant but me. And Jimi Hendrix comes blasting out of the speakers from the concert, even though I did not see him that crack of dawn. And the restaurant guy comes in, he says, I heard you were at Woodstock. And he's playing the music for me. And I'm thinking, like, I'm in this little town in Italy, right? And then I go with my husband I'm waiting for him to come back from his first meeting with the publishing company people and what they're going to do with the computer and whatever. And he says, when I went in, he said, they were introducing me, and I thought we were going to start the work right away. But the guy said, we heard your wife was at Woodstock. So he played the clip for them. You know what I mean? Like they wanted to see that before they'd start the day. So it was kind of a very, so I'm just sort of leading this into why we happen to be in Italy.
Right.
So when we did our flight, we flew in and out of Amsterdam. And we had a very dear friend of my husband's who he had known since he was, I think, in high school.
What is that? Ed, you're going to have to pronounce that. My husband can speak Italian. So
maybe that's the name of the publishing company.
Hey,
Mondadori. I bet that's it. But how would I?
Hello. Yes. Hello. It's Arnaldo Mondadori Editore.
Ah, well, beautiful. So
I couldn't say that.
We stop at Amsterdam, and we're going to see my husband's friend who, when my husband was working in the MIT Media Lab in those days, they were getting hacked. And when they found out who it was this younger guy who came in and met them, and my husband and him became friends, and they'd been friends ever since. This guy, I think, was just getting out of high school at that time. Well, ever since I ever met this man, and all the years I've known him, he has long red hair, long red beard, and his name is Don, and he is a brilliant, he had something to do with The Sims, and he's a brilliant computer guy. Mm-hmm. So we're there with him, and we're having a really nice visit, and he takes us around because he lives in Amsterdam. We go to his apartment and go out to the restaurant. Excuse me. And then he says, well, I said, we'll be going to Italy now, but we'll be back after David does his work for a week. We'll return, and we'll have a couple more days before we fly out. So he says, great, I look forward to seeing you then. So we leave. We zip down to Italy. We go to sleep that night, and the next morning I wake up and I say, David, I had this dream that I feel so embarrassed by. It's almost impossible. It's very hard for me to even tell you the dream. I said, because I feel so strange about it all. I said, but in the dream, our friend Don was there, and he approached me sexually. I said, and this felt really, really weird. I said, because it was really powerful, passionate sex. And I said, I know he prefers men. So I couldn't understand, what is he doing with me in this dream? And I said, and the weirdest part of it all, I said, is his whole beard was shaved off. And Dave is laughing. He said, he's never shaved his beard in all the 20 years or whatever he's known him. He said, nobody even knows what his face looks like under there. And I said, well, it was a very bizarre dream. I said, and now we have to have dinner with him. We go back to Amsterdam. I'm going to be all embarrassed. I'm going to be turning red. I'm not going to feel right. I said, because the dream was just so real. I don't know what to do. So I said, should I tell him the dream? Should I not tell him the dream? I'm embarrassed by the whole thing. So we're in the restaurant. We're back in Amsterdam, and we have like 2 or 3 nights before we fly home. And we're in that restaurant. I'm sure your husband would know where it is. It was a place, I guess, where they hung people and everything. All, brick building and all stone or whatever. And it's a restaurant now. And we're sitting there and we're waiting. And I'm sitting at the table, and Don comes in across, it's only been a week that we haven't seen him or less. He comes walking in across the restaurant, and both our mouths are dropped, hanging open. He has no beard. It's completely shaved off. So we look at him, and I say to him, I have to tell you my dream. I said, and David's my witness. I'm so thankful my husband has always been my witness. Otherwise, you feel like people think you're crazy.
Yes.
And you have nobody to tell it to. And then it's like not validated, unless you write it down or you postmark it, or I don't know. I have him to be my validation. And I say, Don, I'm going to be turning red to tell you this. I said, but I had this amazing dream that you and I had sex together, and it was the most passionate, amazing thing ever. I said, but you had to shave your beard, and you had a shaven face, and now you do. I said, I'm a little freaked out here. And he says, well, when you guys left, the next day I met what might be my soulmate. I met the man of my dreams, and he said to me, let's go to Prague together. And we could have a wonderful week there together and be with each other. He said, the only thing is you have to shave that beard if you're going to go with me to Prague. So Don shaves off the beard. He goes with him to Prague and has the most passionate, amazing, sensual, sexual experience with this man that he's ever imagined and thought that might be his guy for life. And he looks at me and he said, I don't want you looking at me when I'm having sex again.
Oh my God, that is the best.
And I think that might be a good story for us to end on.
Yes. I absolutely enjoyed that story, because I guess the way it is you were looking and feeling what his partner was feeling.
Yes.
And seeing. So, oh my gosh, and he took it quite well.
Yes, he mentions it often whenever he says, just watch out for her. It's woo. I mean, he had no doubt what I had experienced. It was just
right.
So it was a very validating, and and how do you explain that to people? Say, well, how did you know? Or how did you whatever? It was a dream.
Right. Oh my goodness, I love it. I absolutely love it.
In fact, that's the other thing I want to add to that before we close here, is that that's one of the times when the dreams are a positive, wonderful experience. The ones of the births, the ones of sex, these are great ones. The ones of the death and me experiencing them, how they're dying, and all those are those are the heavies. Yeah. I love the kind like the one we just shared.
Yes.
But it's usually the intensity and energy around negative things, or things where people get scared or things like that. That seems to shine a bigger beacon.
Yes.
Than the ones of, I'm having a girl or I'm having very hot sex.
But see, that's why I when I heard you, I was like, I have to have her on, because not everything has to be that fearful, scary darkness. There is some happy, light, fun, sexual, I was like, I mean, how could you not?
Well,
I just, I was just tickled when I reached out to you, and I was like, "Oh, thank you," because
Well, you're the second person who's reached out to me to be on their show, and I feel so honored that people like what I'm saying, that they would reach out to want me to have them on their show. I'm just saying, I'm very grateful that you asked me to be here today.
well, I'm grateful as well that you took the opportunity to give me the chance because I just love your stories. I mean, you have such wonderful stories. Yes, you have some dark ones, but you have some really beautiful, lighthearted and wonderful stories. And you've even got more stories I haven't even got to touch on. So I will definitely gonna have to have you come back if you will let me have you back.
I'd love to.
Thank you so much. Um, she does have her podcast. Y'all can check her out. Her podcast is Gail, and I'm getting this right because it's not Hasten, it's Heisen.
It's Tyson.
So if you pull up Gail Heisen, um, a small medium at large, you will find her, and her podcasts are absolutely wonderful. They are just, I every time I watch it, I just oh.
And
So
I'm on like 11, I think 11 different, so I'm on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, for people who don't want to watch, that they like to listen.
yeah.
I think I'm on all those. I don't know exactly. I'm not a good computer person, but I've been doing good with Zoom and the StreamYard here.
Yes, yes. But I appreciate so much giving me this opportunity to share your stories because they are some beautiful stories. And you're such a beautiful woman. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I hope your listeners enjoyed. We don't know who we reached out to, but I hope they're happy.
Oh, I get a lot of people that end up watching afterwards. And Sabra says, "This was awesome. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Miss Gail."
Well, thank you. And don't forget to send me the link so I can put it on my website. I also have a website if anyone wants to see, and it's a small medium at large.co. And they can see all my shows on there, and they can see about my book or anything. They can see that I really was once cute.
Robbie says he really enjoyed this and it was nice to meet us both. So thank you, Robbie. I appreciate you coming. Hope to see you in some further ones. I've got some more guests down the road that are interesting. So thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Gail. I appreciate your time so much.
Thank you.
I really hope to have you back and delve into some more of your stories because they are wonderful.
Well, I look forward to it. You have a really good rest of the evening, and thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much, guys, for tuning in, listening. I saw Gail, and her laughter is contagious, and she is such a beautiful woman inside and out. I I don't know what to say, but thank you guys for being here, for participating. I appreciate it so much. And right now, my next guest is going to be December 30th. And it is with Matthew Stapley, and he is a medium. And he is going to be a blast, just like Gail was. So you don't want to miss that. And hopefully, I'll have something for you around the 16th, working on things. But thank you again for coming. I appreciate every one of y'all. Y'all make this fun. And I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you.